"Get away from it, Liam, that mutt's probably diseased." The woman's voice cracked through the stale afternoon air like a slap. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement as she tugged her little girl away, her disgust curling in every word. But Liam didn't move. He crouched lower, brown corduroy pants brushing the dust as he reached out with one hesitant hand. The dog didn't react. She was too still, not sleeping, not dead, but somewhere suspended in a terrible, trembling silence. Her ribs moved in and out so slowly it hurt to watch, and underneath her curled belly, something was wrong. The town of Elmbrook had never been kind to strays. It was the kind of place where people went to work, came home, closed their blinds. They threw out leftovers, but never looked anyone, animal or human, directly in the eye. It was safe, as realtors liked to say, but beneath the trimmed hedges and beige homes was a hollow that swallowed anything inconvenient. The dog had shown up 2 days ago, dragging herself behind the bakery dumpster. She was a bony, brindle-coated thing with glassy eyes and twitching legs. The townspeople saw her. They stepped around her. Some whispered that someone would take care of it, but they never meant themselves. Liam saw her too. Every day after to school, he passed by with his younger brother Nolan in tow. 11 years old, with untied laces and a backpack held together by duct tape. Liam wasn't like the other kids on Wilton Street. He didn't have polished lunchboxes or soccer tryouts. What he had was a mother who worked nights, a silence that lived in their apartment like a roommate, and a heart that noticed what everyone else ignored. "Is she sleeping?" Nolan had asked the first day, his voice barely louder than the wind. "No," Liam had whispered, "she's hiding." It was on the third afternoon that something inside Liam snapped. He dropped his backpack beside the dumpster, ignoring the stale smell of yeast and rotting fruit, and kneeled next to the dog. Her eyes blinked slowly at him. She didn't growl, didn't flinch. Her breath rattled through her, shallow and wet. "Hey girl," he murmured, "you okay?" And then, without thinking, he gently touched her side. That was when he saw it. Tucked under her belly, almost buried in her matted fur, was something that didn't belong. At first he thought it was a wound, a red, pulsing mass, almost hidden beneath her body. But as his eyes adjusted, he realized what it was. Tiny legs. The boy froze, then scrambled back so fast he knocked over a trash can. There's something under her," he gasped, shouting. "There's babies, there's puppies." A couple walking by slowed down for half a second, then kept going. "Ma'am, please, she's got puppies. I think they're stuck," Liam yelled, running toward a woman unlocking her car. She recoiled as if he'd thrown something at her. "I don't have time for that, kid. But they're gonna die." "I said, I don't have time." She slammed the door shut and drove off. Back at the dumpster, Nolan stood rooted in place, staring at the dog with wide eyes. "What do we do?" he whispered. Liam didn't know. He felt the hot sting of helplessness rising in his chest. No phone, no adult, just the manda dog, too broken to move, sheltering something far too fragile to survive the night. But then something unexpected happened. The dog moved, just slightly. She shifted one paw, nudging the side of a milk crate with the last strength she had. Beneath her, one of the tiny shapes wriggled, a mewling sound so faint it could have been the wind. And that was it. The dam broke. Liam turned to Nolan. "We need to get help. Real help. Come on." They ran past the convenience store, past the dead library, to the old man who lived above the bicycle repair shop. Henry Calloway wasn't known for being helpful. He was known for yelling at teens and hoarding milk bottles. But Liam remembered something: the faded dog collar hanging by Henry's door. "Mr. Calloway," Liam banged on the chipped green door. "Please, we need you." No answer. He banged harder. "She's gonna die. The dog behind the bakery, she's got puppies. We can't get them out." The door creaked. The old man squinted at them through scratched glasses. "Puppies, yes, and she's hurt bad. I think they're stuck under her, and no one's doing anything." Henry muttered something under his breath. Then, to Liam's shock, turned and disappeared inside. They waited, heartbeat by heartbeat. When he returned, Henry had a rusty toolbox in one hand and an old quilt in the other. "Follow us." And they did. Down the alley, past the bakery, to where the dog still lay curled like a question no one wanted to answer. Henry dropped to one knee, muttering low to her. His hands, old but steady, moved across her side. "She didn't fight." "What's her name?" Nolan whispered. "Doesn't have one," Liam said. "Not yet." The old man gently peeled back the fur. He exhaled sharply. "Damn fools. This girl's been giving birth in silence, probably for hours. She's stuck. They're stuck. Can you help?" Henry didn't answer. He just looked up at Liam, at Nolan, and said, "Go boil water. Clean towels. You two are gonna help when me bring life into this ugly, ungrateful town." And just like that, the world cracked open. The dog, nameless but not forgotten, let out a low whimper, and under her, the tiniest yelp rang out. Hope had found a heartbeat, and it wasn't going away quietly. The alley behind the bakery had turned into something sacred. What was once a passage of neglect and rot now pulsed with the tremble of life and the hush of fear. Liam stood back, clutching a steaming bowl of water with both hands, while Nolan held a stack of threadbare towels, all of them unevenly folded, in his arms. Henry Calloway was on his knees beside the dog, sleeves rolled, breath steady, eyes sharper than they'd looked in years. The dog, who still had no name, had begun to tremble again, not from pain this time, but from exhaustion. Her body had done more than most would have expected, but she wasn't done yet. A slick bundle lay beside her, mewling faintly, its eyes not yet open. Another struggled at her side, half-born, its tiny form wedged awkwardly. That was the one. Henry was focused on. His fingers moved with a careful urgency as he murmured under his breath, not to the boys, but to the dog, to her, as if she could understand him. Maybe she could. She's too weak to finish this herself, Henry said. Quietly, we lose this one. We could lose her too. Liam's heart beat so loudly he could hear it in his ears. What do we do? He asked, his voice cracking with the weight of all he didn't know. Henry looked up just once. We help. That's what. The next several minutes were a blur of hushed instructions and shaky hands. Liam held the dog's head in his lap, whispering nonsense and fragments of lullabies his mother used to sing before work stole her voice. The dog didn't resist. Her head was hot, too hot, and her breaths came in short, broken gusts. Nolan stood frozen behind them, one hand on the wall to steady himself, the other clutching a towel like it was a lifeline. Henry worked. He spoke only when necessary, his hands gloved in trembling red and fading fur. Finally, with one long, quiet motion, he pulled a wet, glistening pup slipped free, to still. Liam held his breath. Henry rubbed the tiny body with the rough edge of a towel, muttering something under his breath. He rubbed again, and then, a twitch, a squeak, a gasp, so soft it was almost imagined, but it was there. She's got 3 now, Henry murmured, all alive. A wave of relief washed over Liam so suddenly he almost dropped the water bowl. But the moment of calm didn't last, because now that the adrenaline had ebbed, now that the pup had been born, they could all see something they hadn't before. Mother was bleeding. Slowly but steadily. Henry's eyes darkened. She's not done, he said. There's another in there. It's not coming out. Liam's stomach turned. What happens if it doesn't? Henry didn't answer. He didn't have to. The dog let out a sound, then a low, rasping groan that rattled deep in her chest and froze the boys in place. Her legs twitched. Her eyes blinked open and shut. Her body, already so thin it looked like it had been drawn with pencil, shuddered from the inside. Is she dying? Nolan whispered. Henry exhaled slowly. Not if I can help it. But I need you both to do exactly what I say. Liam nodded. Nolan didn't answer but stepped closer. What followed wasn't fast or clean or the kind of thing that people put in children's books. It was real, messy and terrifying. The kind of thing that etched itself into memory like a scar. Henry coaxed the last pup out with a grimace and a prayer, and when it finally slipped free, it was still Liam's heart broke a little as Henry worked furiously over it. No squeak this time, no twitch, just silence. Henry finally set it down and shook his head once, barely. That one was too late, he said quietly. But the mothers, still breathing, that's something. They all sat back then, the quiet stretching long and thick around them. The 3 living pups snuggled blindly against their mother's side, seeking warmth that barely remained. Henry used the rest of the towels to wrap her gently, insulating her against the cool evening breeze that had started to creep in. Liam couldn't take his eyes off her face. She looked ancient and broken and peaceful all at once. She needs a vet, Henry said after a long pause. But I doubt anyone around here lift a finger for a dying stray. Then we'll take her, Liam said immediately. There's that clinic by the hardware store. Maybe she won't survive a car ride in this state. Henry interrupted. She needs to be kept warm, quiet, fed slowly, hydrated. Then maybe we think about a vet. Can she make it? Nolan asked. Henry didn't answer at first. He looked down at the dog, then at the pups. I've seen worse make it and better not. But she's got something most of them don't. What's that, Liam asked. Henry gave a tired smile. That night they didn't go home. They took turns watching her. Henry brought out a lantern and an old space heater. Liam scrounged a cardboard box from the bakery's back door, lined it with his own hoodie, and made a nest for the puppies. Nolan curled up beside her and didn't say a word for a long time. Just before midnight, Henry handed Liam a warm can of soup and said, "You ought to name her." Liam looked down at the dog. Her sides moved in and out slowly. The pups pressed against her like shadows. "Maisie," he said quietly. "She looks like a Maisie." The name settled over the alley like a blanket. Soft, improbable, real. That was when Henry looked up suddenly. Eyes narrowed. Footsteps were approaching, heels, quick and deliberate. A flashlight flicked on and scanned the alley. "You boys out here," a voice called. "Female." Firm. Liam stood. "Who is it?" he asked. The flashlight lowered, and a figure stepped into view. A tall woman in scrubs, holding a medical bag. Henry raised an eyebrow. "That's Dr. Alara Quinn. Vet used to be mine back when I had dogs." Liam stared. "You called her," I said. "No vet would come," Henry said, grinning faintly. "I didn't say I wouldn't try anyway." Dr. Quinn crouched beside the dog, her eyes scanning with practiced urgency. "She's got a fighting chance," she said finally. "And so do they." Liam didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or if Maisie would still be breathing when the sun came up. But for the first time in what felt like years, he felt something stir in his chest, a flicker of stubborn, trembling hope. And this time, The town would have to see her, because Maisie wasn't a stray anymore. She was someone mourning in Elm, arrived with a dull sky and the same routine silence that had always blanketed the town. But for once something was different. In the narrow alley behind the bakery, life had not faded and the night it had deepened. Maisie was still alive. Her breath came slow, but steadier now. Her body remained weak and limp, but her ears flicked at sound, and when Liam whispered her name, her eyes found him just briefly. Just enough. Dr. Alara Quinn had stayed longer than anyone expected. She'd arrived the night before like a ghost with purpose, wrapped Maisie's shivering form in thermal blankets, started her on fluids with a calm precision that didn't match the panic in Liam's chest. She worked without questions, without scolding, as if this Backley emergency was exactly where she was supposed to be. Now, in the soft haze of dawn, Liam sat on an upturned crate, a paper cup of lukewarm cocoa in his hands, watching Maisie and her pups breathe and sink. Nolan was asleep nearby, curled in an old sleeping bag Henry had dragged out from his storage closet. Henry himself leaned against the wall, silent as stone but alert, his eyes on the horizon like he was guarding something ancient and fragile. Dr. Quinn finally stood and stretched, her joints cracking. She made it through the worst, she said quietly, almost to herself. That tells me she wants to live. Liam blinked hard, his throat tight. She didn't give up. No, Alara agreed, looking over the 3 tiny pups nestled beside their mother. But it's not over. They're still vulnerable. She's going to need around-the-clock care, and not out here. Liam's heart stuttered. You mean take her to the clinic? I can't, Alara said, and the words landed like a stone. The clinic's under renovation. Half the machines are packed. We're running and barely that. She paused. But I can train you, all of you, if you're serious. Liam looked at Henry, who gave a slow nod, then at Nolan, who was waking up now, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and then back at Maisie, who had survived a night no one expected her to. I'm serious, Liam said. We all are. And so began the days that turned the alley into something else entirely. Dr. Quinn returned each morning with syringes, gauze, powdered milk replacer, and a notebook full of instructions. She taught them how to keep Maisie's fluids steady, how to weigh the pups and spot signs of dehydration, how to read temperature without making mistakes that could cost lives. Henry, once gruff and impatient, took to the role of teacher's aide with an almost reverent discipline. Nolan became the puppy watcher, counting their breaths and names like they were magic spells. Liam became everything else: nurse, cleaner, listener, keeper of calm. Word began to spread, not in a grand, flashing way, but in whispers and passing glances. People who had once ignored the dog entirely now stopped at the alley's edge, unsure of what they were witnessing. Some brought canned food, some said nothing but lingered too long to call it coincidence. Still, not everyone was pleased. On the 3rd afternoon, as Liam was cleaning out a shallow tray of water, a woman in pressed slacks and a too-white blouse appeared. This is a public health risk, she said sharply, looking down at the sleeping bundle of fur like it was a pile of garbage. There are bylaws against harboring strays, especially sick ones. Henry stepped forward before Liam could say anything. She's not a stray anymore. She's got a name. She's got care. And you, ma'am, can take your bylaws and call animal control if you like, but you'll have to tell them to walk past a 10-year-old boy to take her. The woman opened her mouth, then closed it. After a long moment, she turned and walked away without another word. That night, it rained. Liam woke to thunder and the heavy scent of wet concrete. He panicked at first, thinking the heater had failed, that Maisie would be too cold, that the pups would be soaked. But when he pulled back the tarp Henry had strung up earlier that week, he found something entirely different. The alley was lit by soft yellow bulbs, no solar-powered lights Henry had salvaged from a job years ago. The space had been enclosed. On 3 sides, tarps doubled, crates turned into storage. Maisie lay on a raised platform made from stacked wood and pillows. Her fur, cleaner now, still patchy in places, had started to shine. The pups suckled quietly, each no bigger than Liam's hand, but stronger than they had been days ago. He didn't notice the figure in the corner at first. Then Dr. Quinn stepped forward, holding a clipboard. You couldn't sleep either? She asked gently. Liam shook his head. I keep thinking she won't be here when I wake up. She will be, Alara said. She wants to be. Not for herself anymore, I think. Liam looked at her then. For who? For you. Something in his chest cracked then. Not from sadness but from the sudden, overwhelming weight of being seen. I don't think I've ever mattered this much to anyone, he whispered. You do now, she said. 2 for lives. Just then, Maisie opened her eyes and gave the faintest thump of her tail. It hit the pillow once, then again. A thank you, maybe. Or something better. The next morning the alley wasn't just an alley anymore. A hand sign appeared, nailed to the bricks near the back entrance of the bakery. Maisie's corner, no kindness too small. The woman from before never returned. But a boy in a red cap brought puppy kibble. A retired teacher dropped off an old dog bed. Someone else left a note. We see you now. Liam taped it beside the sign. Not for himself, for the stray who wasn't invisible anymore. By the end of the 2nd week, Maisie could stand. Not for long, and not without trembling, but she rose. She shifted her weight and stretched her legs, like someone who'd forgotten what it meant to be a body, not just a burden. The pups, now eyes open and legs wobbling, stumbled around her, chewing each other's ears and yelping when they tripped over nothing. Life had returned, not in a loud, miraculous wave, but slowly, in soft edges and ordinary miracles. Liam had changed. His eyes looked older, not tired, purposeful. He moved with the steady calm of someone who knew exactly what mattered, and exactly what he was willing to protect. Maisie's corner had become his whole world. Each day after school, he dropped his bag without even going inside his apartment, and headed straight to the alley. He didn't even need to check if Henry or Nolan were there. He knew they would be. This wasn't a project anymore. It was a pact. But one afternoon, the silence changed. It started with Nolan's voice, high-pitched, breathless. Liam, come here, quick." Liam dropped the bowl of warm water he'd been carrying. It sloshed across his shoes, but he didn't care. He sprinted toward the makeshift shelter and found Nolan crouched beside the pups, pointing. One of them wasn't moving. The smallest, the one with the single white paw and crooked ear, lay curled beside its siblings, completely still, not sleeping. Limp. Liam single quotes as heart kicked into panic. "Is it breathing?" Nolan nodded, too fast, but barely. "It won't wake up." Henry was there in seconds. He didn't say anything at first. Just scooped the pup up in both hands and pressed it to his chest. Listening, then he nodded once and said, "Get Dr. Quinn." Liam didn't wait. He ran. Full sprint, lungs burning, feet flying across cracked sidewalks. It didn't matter that he didn't know if she'd be home. He didn't care about the traffic or the eyes that followed him as he flew past. The only thing that mattered was saving that tiny, broken thing with a heartbeat so faint it barely existed. Ilara opened her door before he even knocked. "He's crashing," Liam gasped. "One of the puppies, it's not breathing right." She didn't ask questions. She just grabbed her bag and keys. Back at the alley, Henry had wrapped the pup in a towel and was cradling it like glass. Ilara dropped to her knees beside him and unzipped her kit. "Hypothermic," she said quickly. "Weak pulse. Could be fading from anemia. Dehydration, could be 100 things." "Can you save him?" Liam asked, voice shaking. "I don't know." She looked him straight in the eye. "But I'll try." They worked quickly. Warmed fluids. Glucose rubbed gently against gums. Drops of formula one at a time. No heroics, no drama. Just hands working against time. Maisie whined from the corner, unable to rise, eyes locked on her pup with a fear that no animal should ever have to feel. Hours passed. The pup didn't move. Then, just as the last hint of daylight bled from the sky, it twitched once. Then again. Ilara held her breath. The tiny thing let out a squeak, barely a sound, more like the whisper of breath on glass. "But it was something. He's not out of the woods," Ilara said quietly. "But he's still here." Liam lowered himself onto the ground, legs giving out beneath him. He felt a sharp, overwhelming wave of something that sat between exhaustion and joy. "We'll call him Chance," Nolan whispered, "because that's what he got." The name stuck. That night they took turns watching him. Maisie didn't sleep. Her eyes stayed fixed on her baby until, by morning, he was strong enough to crawl toward her again. But Ilara's expression stayed tight. Wary. She pulled Liam aside just after sunrise. "He needs better odds," she said. "You all have done more than anyone expected, but this is critical care now. He should be in a facility." "You said the clinic's under renovation." "It is," she nodded. "But there's a rescue center 2 towns over. They have equipment, incubators, blood testing, round-the-clock supervision." Liam looked toward the alley, to the makeshift home they had built with their hands and hope. "Are you saying we have to send him away?" "I'm saying he might die here," she replied. "Even with all your love." Liam didn't answer. He just sat with that truth for a long time. Then he nodded. They made the transfer later that day. Chance was placed in a travel crate lined with Henry's scarf and a piece of Liam's hoodie. Maisie licked him once, then lay her head down, eyes heavy but still watching. The goodbye nearly tore Liam in half. As the rescue van drove away, Nolan clutched his brother's hand. "He's coming back, right?" Liam wanted to say yes, wanted to promise, but he'd learned not to lie to Nolan. "Not about this." "I hope so," he whispered. Maisie didn't eat that night. She barely moved. The other 2 pups curled against her side, but something in her had dimmed. Like she knew one of her pieces had been taken and she hadn't gotten a choice. But the town noticed that next morning someone left a bag of new blankets, another left puppy vitamins. Someone else, a teenager with a camera, asked if he could record a short clip to share online. Liam agreed without thinking. By the end of the day, that video had over 2,000 views. Maisie's story had begun to travel beyond Wilton Street, beyond Elm. Strangers wrote messages. Some offered donations. A woman in New Jersey sent an insulated dog bed. A class of 3rd graders from Kansas mailed handmade cards that said things like, "Get well soon, Maisie, and your baby's gonna be okay." The alley, once a forgotten corner of a quiet town, had become something else, a heartbeat, a lighthouse, a promise that maybe, just maybe, there was still space in the world for second chances. And all it had taken was one boy who didn't walk away. It was 2 weeks before Chance came home. The rescue center had called early that morning. Lara answered the phone and didn't say much except, "You'll want to be here when they arrive." That was enough for Liam to drop everything and sprint to Maisie's corner, breath hitching in his chest, heart pounding with something too big to name. Maisie was already awake when he got there. She hadn't moved much in days, except to feed her 2 remaining pups, but this morning something in her had changed. She lifted her head without help. Her ears twitched at every sound. When Liam knelt beside her and whispered, "He's coming," her tail thumped once. Weak but certain. The van pulled up not long after. It looked like nothing special, just a plain white transport vehicle, but for Liam, it might as well have been a parade float. The rescue worker stepped out carrying a small crate, and inside, blinking against the light, was Chance. He was still smaller than his siblings, still a little wobbly when he moved, but his eyes were bright, alert, stubborn. The moment the crate opened, he yelped twice, sharp and clear, and Maisie made a noise that Liam had never heard before. It wasn't a bark or a whimper, it was something older, something sacred. The sound a mother makes when something lost returns to her. Liam stepped back and let them reunite, watching in silence. As Chance crawled into the space between Maisie's front legs and nestled there like he'd never left, the other 2 pups crowded around him, sniffing and licking and wrestling as if trying to relearn the shape of their brother. It was chaos. Clumsy, joyful chaos. Henry stood beside Liam, arms crossed over his chest, a rare softness in his eyes. "Didn't think that little runt would make it," he said gruffly, "but here he is." Liam nodded, his voice too full to speak. In the days that followed, everything changed quickly. The story had traveled further than anyone expected. A local news crew came by and filmed a segment called "The Boy, the Dog, and the Alley That Changed a Town." Donations poured in, not just money, but supplies, food, bedding, even toys. One woman from across the country offered to sponsor the pups' veterinary care for the next year. A retired vet tech volunteered to visit twice a week and help with Maisie's recovery, and yet, through all the attention and applause, Liam remained steady. Grateful, yes, but never letting the noise distract him from the one thing that mattered most: Maisie, because she still wasn't fully out of the woods. Her body was healing, but slow. Some mornings she wouldn't eat. Some nights she'd tremble in her sleep, haunted by something she couldn't tell them. But she always opened her eyes when Liam called her name. She always moved when her pups cried, and every day she got just a little stronger. Then one afternoon, something happened that Liam hadn't dared to hope for. Maisie stood fully, not shaking, not slipping. She stood, stretched, and then took one slow step toward him, prompting, no assistance, just instinct, just choice. She walked to him, laid her head against his knee, and let out a long, low breath, and Liam cried. He didn't mean to. He didn't even know he was crying until Henry gently set a hand on his shoulder and said, "You did right by her." It was true, he had. The next few weeks blurred into warmth and noise and change. Maisie's corner grew literally. The town gave permission to use the vacant lot behind the bakery as a permanent space. Volunteers helped clean and build. A small wooden structure was erected with a roof, windows, and heat. It wasn't just for Maisie anymore. It was for all the animals no one had seen, or had chosen not to see, until now. They called it the corner, not a shelter, not a clinic, just a space, a safe space. A place where someone could arrive broken and still be met with open hands and quiet patience. By the end of the month, Maisie was strong enough to go for short walks. Her fur had grown in patchy but soft, her eyes alert, her stride no longer hesitant. Her pups, now named Chance, Fig, and Clover, followed her everywhere, bumping into her legs, tumbling over one another in the dirt. People came just to watch them play. And then, something happened that Liam didn't expect. A family showed up, not from Elmbrook but from a nearby town. A man, a woman, and a girl about Nolan's age. They'd seen the story, read the posts, watched the video more times than they could count. And they had come with one question: would Maisie be up for adoption? The question hit Liam like a kick to the chest. He hadn't even considered it, not seriously. Not until now. He looked at Maisie, who was dozing in the sun, her pups piled beside her. She looked peaceful, settled. "She's yours?" the woman asked gently. Liam shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "She's her own." And that was when it clicked. Maisie didn't belong to him. She didn't belong to anyone. She belonged to herself, and to the small corner of the world that had finally chosen to see her. He knelt beside her, pressed his forehead to hers, and whispered, "You tell me when you're ready, I'll listen." Maisie stayed another month. Then one day, she walked up to the same family, nuzzled the little girl's hand, and sat quietly beside them. Liam watched it happen, and he knew she was ready. They adopted her that day, not as a rescue, not as a burden, but as a member of their family. The pups stayed in town, adopted by people who had once walked past without noticing. Chance lived with Henry, Fig went home with Alara, and Clover, curious Clover stayed with Liam and Nolan. Every now and then, Liam would visit the new family. Maisie always recognized him. She'd run to him, tail wagging, eyes bright, but she never looked sad, never looked back. She didn't need to, because sometimes a second chance isn't about fixing the past. It's about being seen fully, and finally, and knowing you were never really broken at all. And in that quiet alley, behind a forgettable bakery in a town that had once looked away, one boy had taught them all how to look again, not with pity, not with fear, but with love, and everything changed.